Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.
Normally, we're going so fast and so hard for so long, we don't even know what we're missing. We were not thriving coming into COVID, and we don't want to return to life the way we left it.
Right.
I know I'm like talking.
No, this is so great. No, I'm like hanging on every word. I'm like, go on. I need all of this. Hey y'all, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show. I'm so excited because today we are talking about how to stop being stressed. Yeah. Do you need that? Because I do. Maybe this whole episode is just for me. I don't know, but I got to tell you, this is one of those things that I struggle with. Anxiety creeps up, fear creeps up, stress and overwhelm is just a part of life, especially in this world that we live in this year in particular. So I'm so excited to dive into this topic and show you what you can do that can help calm your nerves. And then I get to sit down with the amazing and brilliant Rebekah Lyons. And her book, Rhythms of Renewal, is incredible. And she gives us very specific, practical things that we can do to calm our nerves and ease our anxiety. But first, let's talk about how to stop being stressed. Now, I got to give you guys an example. A few weeks ago, I was scheduled to speak for an event here at our office. This was Entree Leadership Summit. It was a very big, fancy, important, awesome event. Okay, we'd done everything in the planning to make sure it was going to go perfectly, even in this crazy year. But on the very first day of the event, y'all, I woke up and I was just feeling weird. Like I had like a little bit of allergy stuff going on and started to feel like my chest was maybe a little bit tight. And so I did exactly what you always should never, ever, ever do when you have symptoms. I Googled it, right? Googled these symptoms. Are these a symptom of coronavirus? Yeah. They are, which by the way, if you haven't Googled symptoms of coronavirus, like everything is a symptom of coronavirus. A broken arm is a symptom of coronavirus. So you start to Google symptoms of coronavirus. I have some of those symptoms. I convinced myself that I have coronavirus in the week of the most important big event that we do here at our office. And y'all, I started to panic. My chest got tighter. My breathing got more shallow. My stomach started to turn into knots. I started to feel sick and upset. And then it just reaffirmed, it is coronavirus. It definitely is coronavirus because an upset stomach and nausea and a tight chest and shallow breathing, all those are symptoms. Y'all, what happened was I literally got myself so worked up. I had myself convinced I had coronavirus. And it all started with a little bit of allergy drainage that morning. Once I started to calm myself down, once I started to work myself through this anxiety and get my bearings and start to discern the difference between freaking out and COVID-19, I realized I don't have coronavirus. Immediately, my breathing was more calm, my shoulders were more relaxed, my stomach settled, everything calmed down, and I knew it was just anxiety. Believe it or not, when I Googled, is this anxiety or coronavirus, there were a lot of results because a lot of people were struggling with that. I had myself convinced I was sick with COVID-19 when I wasn't. I was just anxious. You know what? When we start to feel this anxiety creeping up, which can happen for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's not an event you're going to. Maybe it's your kids going back to school. Maybe it's a big deadline coming up at work. Maybe it's just a relational issue that is stressing you out. Your body will have a physiological response to that stress. Your breathing will get shallowed. Your chest will get tight. Your body will start to respond to how you're feeling. But the good news Even though you can't totally control your environment, you can't totally control your relationships or your kids going back to school or all the external stressors in your life, we know this year more than ever, we can't control a lot of things that we want to control and wish we could control. But you can still calm your nerves in spite of it. There are still things that you can do to relieve your stress, remove your anxiety, calm yourself down. All right, so I have a list for you of 7 ideas to help you relieve your stress. They're in no particular order, and you don't have to do all of them. They're just 7 ideas that work for me, and I bet they'll work for you as well. Number 1, breathe. I know that sounds so simple, but when we're nervous, our breathing gets shallow and it becomes worse and worse. Stop and choose to control your breath. There was one particular day just a few weeks ago where I had woken up and was watching the news, and the news was, of course, stress-inducing, and I found myself getting nervous. I was in the kitchen, and I was preparing breakfast for my kids, and I found myself just feeling panicky. And I stopped, I put my hands on the kitchen counter, and I just took some deep breaths. You can do this over and over again. Take a deep inhale, a deep exhale, and continue to train your breathing and train your body to calm down. Of course, it's not a perfect fix-all, but it's one thing you can control that will help you relieve your stress. So the first thing you can do to calm your nerves is to breathe. The second thing you can do, a second idea, is to read. Read your Bible. Read a good book. Read something positive and hopeful. I love the verse in the Bible where it talks about whatever's true, whatever's right, whatever's excellent or praiseworthy. Think about such things. Well, you can read those things. If your mind is running off the rails, you can read things to put good things in your mind. It's training your focus and changing your thought pattern to what is good, what is true, what is hopeful, what is peaceful, what is right. Reading can really help you calm your nerves, especially if you're reading something really, really good and hopeful. The third thing that you can do to help you calm your nerves is to help others. So that might be the last thing you think to do when you're freaking out, when you're stressed, you're overwhelmed. You're probably not like, where can I volunteer? Who can I help today? No, that's not your thought pattern. Your thought pattern is like survival mode, right? Like I'm just hanging on for dear life myself. But if you can find a way to help someone else, it might be showing up with a meal. It might be sending some type of help or support after school for your friends. It might be for you. It might just be opening the door for someone behind you. But when you help others, you take the focus off yourself. When you help others in their problems, when you lend a helping hand or you show up or even just be a listening ear for someone, it totally takes the focus off of your problems and your stressors and all the things going wrong in your life, and it refocuses you on helping someone else. You'll be amazed at how it truly does feel better to give than to receive. Sometimes the best medicine for our problems is helping someone with theirs. It takes our eyes off of our own neediness and inadequacies and problems and helps us focus on something good and helpful for someone else. So your first idea is to breathe. Your second one is to read. Your third one is to help someone else. Your fourth one is to pray. Now, I don't know where you are in your faith, but I will tell you there is something so healing, something so peace-filled and peaceful about praying. I believe that God in heaven is not this distant God that is judging you with a pointing finger and he's too busy to hear your prayers. I believe he is intimate and personal. And he is able to hear your every need and he cares about them. He created every star in the sky and he created every hair on your head and he knows every thought you have before you think it. And he wants to hear from you. He already knows what you're worried about. And he loves it when you come to him with those worries. When you come to him with your prayers, when you come to him with all of your fears, even if they seem silly to you, all your desires, even if they seem selfish to you, that you bring your full self, your whole heart to him and pray. It's one of the best ways to relieve stress in your life. Now, I want to give you another idea, and this is a little bit different, but similar to helping others. Another way for you to relieve stress is to give. So whether it's financially, giving a gift card, to give to others. It's like working with your hands. It's like showing up and helping others, but it takes the focus off of you. It takes the focus off of everything that we need, everything that's going wrong, and allows you to show up and bless someone else with your giving. So whether it's financially, whether it's at your church, whether it's a donation, whether it's a gift card, I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's just a big tip when you go to a restaurant this week. But when you give others, it really does give you a sense of peace and relief. But I've got more ideas for you. Another thing that you can do, and we've got 2 more here. Another thing that you can do, this is really, really fun. Play. I know it seems silly. Like, again, probably the last thing on your mind when you're feeling stressed is like, hey, let's go play on the playground with my kids, or let's wrestle or come up with a scavenger hunt. But y'all, when you play, it brings laughter, it brings lightness, it brings fun to your life when you need it the most. It's amazing how laughter can just break the tension. It's amazing how playing and being silly and having a dance party in your kitchen, or tickling and chasing your kids, or playing hide and seek, or just being crazy in your house, in your home, so simple and for free. It's amazing how those things can relieve your stress. Again, it takes your focus off of the bigness, the largeness, the overwhelm of what's going wrong in your life, and allows you to just focus on what's right in front of you, like your tiny toddler laughing hysterically, which is the greatest sound in the world. Just play. When you're feeling stressed, force yourself to be silly and play, and watch how that calms your nerves and gives you a completely different spirit about you. And then the last idea I have for you to calm your nerves is to exercise. You can't be shocked by this. Y'all know I love to exercise. And as Reese Witherspoon says, exercise gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people don't just kill their husband, y'all. Grab a weight. Do some curls. Run, jumping jacks, push-ups. I don't care. Just do something to move your body. I can't tell you how many times I have gone on a run when I am so mad and stressed about my workday, and I just pound it out on the pavement. And I come home and I'm like, yes, I feel better. I'm proud of the run. I have these endorphins that make me happier. I'm less stressed. I feel more in control. I feel more powerful. It really does help you relieve your stress when you move your body. Maybe you've seen the commercial for Peloton, the stationary bike that is insanely popular, has become like this whole movement. I remember sitting on the couch when I first saw that commercial, and you see this woman, and she's, of course, in like this New York high-rise apartment on her Peloton, but she's like pounding it out on the bike. And then you see her stressed in a meeting at work. And then she's pounding it out on the bike. And then you see her kids being crazy and they won't wear their clothes and they're throwing food. And then she's pounding it on the bike. And then she's dealing with some relationship thing in her family. And then she's pounding on the bike. And I remember at the very end, it just has the title, the brand Peloton. And my husband says, I don't get it. And I was like, oh, I do. Oh, I do. Like, that feels like my life. When things are stressful, sometimes just exercising and sweating and moving your body and pushing yourself is just the thing you need to relieve your stress and calm your nerves. Those are 7 ideas. By no means is that an exhaustive list. There are other things you can do. You know what helps you. You know what helps you relieve your stress, calm your nerves, and take back control of your life, your emotions, and even your body's response in your life. So the main thing I want you to know is that you have more control than you think. Yes, the world is stressful. Yes, it's overwhelming. Yes, it's crazy, and there's a lot you can't control. But as I always remind you, you can control you. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with a good friend and author of her new book, Rebekah Lyons. Rebekah, thanks for being here.
Oh, absolutely.
So we were just talking even before we started recording, the timing of this book is crazy. So this came out in October of last year. You could have never possibly known what this year held for all of us. But just take us back and tell us, why did you want to write specifically about this idea of stress and anxiety before you even knew what was coming this year?
Absolutely. Well, my story with stress and anxiety began about a decade ago. My husband and I moved our 3 kids from the suburbs of Atlanta to Midtown Manhattan. Like, we were right in the heart of like the Upper East Side. Okay. And about 4 months into my time there, I had my first panic attack on a flight. Then it continued on on subways and elevators. And
did you know what that was at the time? If you'd never had a panic attack?
No. All I knew is something just kind of rose in me right as we were hitting turbulence. We were landing in LaGuardia around midnight. And everyone's doubling down with their seatbelt. But I had more of my anxiety was rooted in claustrophobia, this feeling of being trapped metaphorically. And so I was not at all worried about the turbulence. I was just like, when this thing lands, I'm going to be the last one off this plane. And so I just started literally St. Elmo's fire running towards the galley. And the sweet flight attendant's like, what are you doing? You know, and I just was panic. And I kind of collapsed there in the galley. And what began that night lasted for about 20 months. And we had just moved to New York City. But I think what it was for us is the pressure cooker, that all the things maybe I had coping mechanisms for, maybe for the decade prior to that of motherhood, because my firstborn son, I found out at 26, a few hours later, he had a diagnosis of Down syndrome, and then 2 more kids subsequently and within a couple years. So I just was kind of always in this
almost on edge?
Yeah, just because we had to rush him to the ER when he was little. He had croup and respiratory issues. And I guess I was just living in this space of stress. And then we get to New York, and then it just amped everything. And then all of a sudden, you've got 8 million people in the span of 11 miles. There is no such thing as personal space, right? You're just, that metaphor of being trapped became literal.
Real life.
And so that really was my journey, how it began. I never thought I would write. I never thought I would start to teach on it. God He definitely used that season for my faith to just become my source. And about a year and a half in, I just remember waking up in panic in the middle of the night and just wanting it to be done, but not having a sense of what that would look like. And I just remember praying one night, and I just rescue me, deliver me. I can't do this without you. And in that moment, my body just broke. Right out of the panic. I would say now I was just flooded with peace, a peace that I didn't, when Jesus says the peace I give the world cannot give, I'm like, okay, I'll take some of that. I'll take that actual peace. And that just began a healing journey. And so I knew that I needed rhythms in my life. It's been a decade now for sustained emotional health, because we can have muscle memory of anxiety and panic. And if we put ourselves right in a trapped space, or even when I get on an elevator, if there's too many people on it, I'm like, I think I'll wait. I'll just take the stairs. Partly it's just knowing if that low hum is so elevated, we've got to know the rhythms that keep things intact for us, keep us, our head above water, knowing are we too spent? Are we depleted in strength or sleep or all those things? So I wrote it not at all knowing obviously what 2020 would bring. But one thing that's interesting is that we all came into COVID with the stats saying that 4 out of 5 of us had physical symptoms of stress. So it wasn't just me. It was 87% of the American Institute of Stress said that normal, just all of us, living the lives that we chose, look like sleepless nights, anxious thoughts, shallow breathing, a mind that won't quit. And so I was kind of I feel like COVID indirectly, this has been the blessing of it, has been just an immediate hard stop to that pace on some level to at least evaluate. So a year ago, I was trying to convince people you need rhythms. And now everyone's we couldn't have done this year without rhythms.
It's so interesting. I want to dig into the 4 rhythms in here. Before we do, I want to talk about just what you were describing, the tight chest and the shallow breathing. I think, and I've done this for sure before, Rebekah, but I think some women just live with that. And they don't question it. They don't consider that there's a better way, there's a different way. There is a peace that, you truly can't understand in this world. And so I would love to hear from you, for someone that's watching right now and they're isn't that just normal? Isn't that just the racing thoughts, the sleepless nights? I've lived like that so long. I didn't know there is another way. Kind of speak to that for a second, and then I want to dig into the rhythms in your book.
Your reality is what you wake up to every morning. And if you've woken up to that as a norm for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, maybe whenever that intensity began, you don't even see how much it's actually taking from you until one day you wake up and you're I no longer recognize the person in the mirror. I don't know where she went. She seemed to used to be fun. Maybe carefree, maybe just happy and joyful. It feels so far reaching. And we don't really incrementally take inventory as we get to that point. But when we hit to this place where we see the disruption there, maybe our kids recognize it, or our husbands recognize it, or our friends, or even vocationally, bosses or peers, that's when we go, okay, I have to come to grips with I've lost a sense of who I was. and I want to find her.
Yeah.
I want to get her back.
Yeah. Yeah,
and so we'll go through a lot of means to figure that piece out.
Yeah, you make a really good point that it happens so gradually that we don't notice. It's not a flip a switch. I mean, we would notice that. You know, we would notice even the extreme example on the airplane. Like, it's like that was such a drastic environment that like, oh, this is not normal. This is not okay. Yeah. But I think just the day-to-day, anxiety we experience. You talked about just the stats even before this year. We did some research on my listeners of the Christy Wright Show, the Business Boutique podcast. I think it was something around 80% experience anxiety and stress. And I was like, wow, this is something we live with all the time. It's so common. And I think that there's obviously a place for medicine, counseling, all of those things. But what I love about your book is you give really practical, approachable, relatable, accessible strategies and habits, rhythms, as you describe it in your book, that can help us combat that and take control. So will you walk us through those? Sure. You've got 4, but let's break down all of them. I want to go through them.
Well, things escalated for us, with the technological revolution, right? Up to 100 years ago, we actually followed the circadian rhythm. Then all of a sudden we had electricity, we had manufacturing, and the phrase always on was for factories because it actually cost more to turn those machines off and then power them back up in the morning. Okay. So that phrase always on was not meant for humans.
Not meant for us.
It was meant it was more efficient, right, to keep things running. And I think somehow along the way we took that for ourselves, we can get a lot more done in 2 more hours of work a day, and we can work into the middle of the night. And God's like, actually, did you know that a sunrise emits blue light, which tells you to wake up, and a sunset emits red light, which is natural melatonin for your body?
Wow. No,
so meanwhile, all we have to do is sit on our porch and, watch the sunset or go for a walk, which is one of my rhythms. But instead we're staring at our phone until 11 or 12 o'clock at night that's constantly saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then all these images that you're comparing yourself to saying here's how you didn't do enough today, right? So I think that's where we have to just stop. And so I start the book with a real practical practice of taking inventory of your life. Okay. What's right, what's wrong, what's confused, and what's missing. Okay. Just take the time. We all had some time in March.
Yes, to think about these things.
To just answer that question. Normally, we're going so fast and so hard for so long, we don't even know what we're missing. Unless we don't recognize ourselves, and then we get depressed about that, but we don't proactively know what to do next. So I take people through that practice. What is missing in your life? Is there laughter that's missing, right? Maybe patience, all the check, right? Yeah. And then the second chapter is tech detox. Partly you've got to quiet that outside input just long enough to hear your own thoughts, to have an ongoing dialogue with God. Yeah. Help show me where I've kind of veered off course. And 43% in a study a month ago said their lives are better than they were entering COVID.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So the idea here is that we were not thriving coming into COVID, and we don't want to return to life the way we left it.
Right.
So the practical ways: rest, restore, connect, create. So rest and restore are the input rhythms. Connect and create are output rhythms. Most of us live in the output rhythms, but we get no input, which is why we're burnt out.
Yeah.
So rest is, all your practical things, what does it look like for Sabbath? What does it look like for a morning routine? Routines for deep sleep is a chapter a lot of people love. How do you quiet the noise at the end of the day so the mind stops racing? And then the restore rhythm is all about physical health. If you've rested and your inner life is okay, that spiritual life, then physically, what are you doing? Food for fuel, how are you moving your body? How is serotonin being released naturally when you elevate your heart rate for 15 to 20 minutes a day? Yeah. That's your happy hormone that gives you positivity, well-being. Yeah. It gives you momentum, which is what we need. We have to move our body. And we know all these things, and we think they're kind of extra.
Right.
But they actually sustain emotional and mental health.
Wow.
They really do. And that was the goal, is we don't want to just thrive in a season because we're killing it. We want a long-term, we want an endurance, right? We want to finish the race. We don't want to burn out in our 40s and be like, I'm out.
Right.
I want to continue to find sustaining power in this. And then the last two, connect and create. Connect is all about relational health and just really practical things in there, like hospitality, leading with vulnerability, a whole chapter on friendship, because we're in the middle of a loneliness epidemic, right?
Yeah.
42% say that they have high feelings of loneliness. 26% say they don't have a real friend.
Wow.
So partly it's how do we actually get in touch with our feelings enough in the rest rhythm? and then be brave enough to actually voice those to someone in a real relationship in the connect rhythm.
Yeah.
So they all work together. And then the last rhythm, I know I'm like talking.
No, this is so great. No, I'm like hanging on every word. I'm like, go on. I need all of this. Go on.
Giving you the whole rundown. Then the last one is create. And the way I do rest, restore, connect, create is they build on each other. Yeah. Once you're rested and your inner life is good, then you have more like positivity to take care of your body, right? To give it what it needs. Then you have something to offer somebody else, right? And then when you work, you always work best in collaboration. It's hard to work well when you're not in good relationships with people.
Right.
So you're working on that connect rhythm, and then create, to me, is the most joyful place because they all work together, but we always want the end.
Yeah.
And you realize it's like a building block that your best work is doing what you love with the people that you love. And you're doing it because you're replenished. You know when to say, like, quit for the day, right? You know when to let the day be the day. Yeah. And so create is all about recovering your passion, working with your hands, saying yes to risk, which all sounds, this is your culture. This is what Ramsey Solutions does. And I love that. It's about, like, what is the foundation required for us to thrive in that place? Yeah. And I'm an output rhythms girl, right? Yeah. Like, don't want to miss a party. Yeah. But I also found over time with like travel and teaching and being on a plane, like most Fridays from September to May for the last 7 years, that 3 days before COVID began, I wrote, I feel trapped in a life that's overwhelming. Because I had said yes and yes and yes and yes to all these wonderful opportunities. But I know in some ways this is an invitation even to take those input rhythms more seriously.
I did a Instagram live back at the beginning of COVID, and I was just doing this like Hope in the Chaos series on Instagram. It was like super casual, just like having conversations. And I was talking to Crystal Evans-Hurst, and she said, we are on a forced elimination diet. We are about to see what was making us sick. And I was like, isn't that interesting? Because
brilliant.
She is. I think we were all feeling exactly what you wrote down. I feel trapped in this life that's overwhelming, a life that we either allowed or created or some combination of both. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, everything was canceled. And it's like you're suddenly aware with what was making you sick, what was making you tired, what was,
Right.
And I love this idea of, even though there's so many downsides that we don't love about this and we want normal human connection again, there's something really beautiful about this blank slate where we can rethink how we live our life and we don't have to rush back to that old life of being overwhelmed and being anxious. You can put some of these practices in place. Now, I want to start with the one that's hardest for me, Rebekah, and I want to go back to the beginning, which is rest, the input.
Yeah, girl.
Because I think a lot of busy women, busy moms, we are in a season, regardless of whether you have kids or not, work inside or outside the home, doesn't matter. We just are so productivity driven.
Yep.
We're so to-do list driven. And it's like, if I can just get through this day, get through this week, get through this season, and that leads to another day, another week, another season.
Sure,
and we're still running hard. And so what does it look like to rest when nothing in your world is restful? Like Rebekah, you have 4 kids. I have 3, but I feel like I have 47 kids sometimes.
They spawn themselves during COVID.
I'm so tired all the time, and they're so hands-on right now. Yeah. Every car seat, every bath, every sippy cup, every diaper.
Yes.
What does it look like to rest and have that input, which is so needed, but also like realistic for someone that is truly in a season where it's like, okay, I don't just have tons of time for myself. So what does that look like for someone that they find it hard to rest?
Yeah.
Because the work is never done. The house is never clean.
Never done. I have a 19-year-old with Down syndrome, and we've adopted a little girl who's now 7 with Down syndrome. And Gabe and I look like empty nesting. What is that? We're not going to have that. I very much understand the work will never be done.
Yes.
But what I've had to go back to is like and sometimes we have to really dig deep. Like, what are the things that actually replenish me and like almost make me laugh out loud, kind of remind me of who I was in college. Yeah. So my husband and I got away for a couple days last week for the first time in 2 years without kids.
Wow.
And I know it was a blessing, and I know that's not happening for everybody right now, but it was enough to like get covered in mud on an ATV and just go down a river and just be reminded that I can laugh hysterically and be like, and
there I am.
Yes,
I'm in there.
She's in there somewhere. But that doesn't have to mean travel. It could mean like a day trip, or could mean a couple hours away. Like take Sabbath seriously. And usually the thing that replenishes you looks like the opposite of work. So if you're in your head a lot and you work a lot like with content and all that, then you need to do something tactile and active, right? Maybe if you're in the circus, then you might rest for you.
Sorry. We have a lot of circus listeners, Rebekah. Go on with the circus example.
I couldn't think of something faster. But if you're more active in your vocation, then maybe like reading a book or going for a walk or whatever, like do something that's a little more different. Find out what it is. But I would say for every day, for me, it's still replenishing for me to get outside. So if I can just get outside in the morning or the evening and take a walk with Gabe or with one of the kids if they want, or by myself or with a girlfriend, whatever, I don't care. Somebody's going to walk with me. Just find that thing. Find that thing. If it's like, if you're an extrovert and you like loud volume, no matter how old you are, I am not that person. Just put the windows down, blare the music, get your favorite song, you know, whatever it is that just makes you laugh and brings some joy there and takes the responsibility off your plate for a moment. I mean, we wear responsibility like a badge and it's a good thing. Like strategy is my number one strength, responsibility is my second. But let's be honest. If those are the only two hats that I wear, I am not that much fun to be around over time.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And so it's like, okay, that's my hat primarily when I'm in kind of the output mode. Right. But that's not replenishing me to like continue to do that well.
Right.
Let's find the
Or even
opposite.
enjoy yourself while you're doing it.
Yeah. All of a sudden, people are like, you're really not that fun to be around when you get in that like laser. And I was like, you know what? That's because I actually haven't balanced it with play. Yeah. And so there's a chapter in there at the beginning of the Restore Rhythm called Permission to Play. And the idea I learned in that, which we mamas all have to be preaching to ourselves, or women in general, I think, is that play and control cannot coexist. So when you're home and you're responsible for the, you know, well-being of your kids and, you know, it's really hard to have a freedom with play. But if you just go, okay, we're just going to let it be what it is. Right. You know, like it's going to
see what happens.
Yeah. And we're going to dance around or we're going to make a mess and we're going to just be okay with it, you know? And maybe that needs to be outside. Maybe that needs to be on vacation somewhere. But find a place in your life where you don't have to carry the responsibility fully, or you can at least offset that with somebody else helping you do that.
I love that idea, and I love that you talk about that. Like laughter and play, I think we are so output-driven, we're so responsibility-driven, productivity-driven, that it's like, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for play. Just a couple weekends ago, my husband asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I was like, I want just some of our friends, like couple friends, to go to the lake and just play. I was like, I want to be a kid. I was like, I'm a grown-up taking care of kids all the time. I was like, I want to be the kid. And so we went down there and we went tubing. Like I have scars all over my arms.
Same. I got one from
It was
tubing.
so fun. I laughed until I could not breathe. Like I couldn't even catch my breath. We were laughing so hard.
Doesn't it surprise you when that kind of laughter comes out of your body? You're like,
and you
it's
really,
so fun.
It's so fun. That's the thing. I think it's like we so underestimate fun. Like it's like this optional thing. It's like your life should be fun. I was speaking a few weeks ago at our Entree Leadership event, and I said this line, and you know how sometimes I know you speak a lot, like you'll say a line and like you hear in the audience go, oh. And I said, because these are like hard driving business owners, like bottom line driven, ROI, everything. And I said, I was talking about fun. And I said, because I promise you this, if you don't make time for fun, you're not any fun to be around. And they were like, oh, like it's like suddenly there was like a reason for it. But I thought, that's true for me. That's true for you. That's true for all of us. That if we don't make time for fun, whether it's fun with our kids in messy play or fun on our own on an ATV or on a tube, then we're not any fun to be around. And life is too short to just be all about the bottom line, the to-do list. It's like, we're not going to have any fun living this life. Okay, Rebekah, I could talk to you about this all day. This is so good. And what I love about it is, we were talking about this even before we recorded, it's so approachable. Because I think this idea of rest or balance or any of these buzzwords we all talk about all the time feels like a moving target. It's like we can't define it, we can't seem to achieve it, and you just make it so accessible. It's like, oh yeah, rest, restore. These are things I can do right now today. I know people will want to know where they can find your book and how they can learn more, and you've got some exciting stuff coming up. So tell us about how they can connect with you.
Oh, absolutely. RebekahLyons.com, and that's spelled REBEKAH.
Yes.
LYONS.com. And the book is anywhere. Books are sold. And one thing that's great is there's some questions at the back of each chapter. So you can even start to take that inventory of your life. And I do think COVID allowed a lot of us to take inventory of our life and is still doing that. Like, how do we reframe that since we got a clean slate on some level? We got to kind of gently get out of the things that we had committed to a long time ago.
Right.
And we were just
I didn't want to go to that anyway. Great, it's canceled. Perfect.
Yep. And we can almost rebuild and reestablish. And that's kind of the mantra of the book. It's never too late to reestablish what you want your life to be about. So to me, that's a promise that you get to take agency over. You actually get to decide. And I give you 7 examples of each rhythm, but those are just mine. You can make your own. And then I have a 90 days Rhythms for Life, 90 Days to Peace and Purpose coming out the end of October. And it's really more how to implement those rhythms that you decide you want to do. Yeah. And just know you're not alone and there's a community doing it with you. So, we all need to challenge each other to get healthy because it's if it's for endurance, I think it's for our kids to see that like work doesn't like make you lose who you are. It actually enlivens that as long as you can find balance around that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the message here too, that is just, we have control over this. You're not a victim in your life. You're not a victim to your schedule. Like, you have control over your restoration, how you connect, how you create. Like, there's a personal responsibility element in this that is convicting, but also empowering. Like, oh, I can change this. Like you said, I can change this. I can make a difference. I can do something different. Thank you so much, Rebekah. You are just such a light. You're so fun to hang out with. And this is one of those things I'm like, oh, so good. I need to do that today. So anyway, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all, I want to spend a few minutes looking at a verse that I'm sure you've heard before, but it is so perfect for what we're talking about today. This is Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Let me tell you what I love about this verse. It doesn't say you won't feel anxious. It doesn't say there won't be things around you in your world or in your life that give you anxiety. It doesn't say any of that. It is in command form, an instruction. Do not be anxious. And so the implication there is that we have a choice. The implication there is that we have some element, maybe not completely, but some element of control, some element of choosing what we put our mind to, choosing what we focus on, choosing what we think about, choosing what we believe in any situation. Anything that is stressing you out right now, this verse is saying, do not be anxious about that. Do not. In the command form, I'm telling you, do not be anxious. But it doesn't leave us hanging there like, okay, what? Well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm feeling anxious. Just like the stories that I've told of my heart is racing and I feel that anxiety creeping up against my control. I don't choose anxiety. Do you? No one does. But I feel my body responding. Instead, it gives you instruction of what to do next. When you feel that happening, it says, in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. With thanksgiving, in everything, anything and everything, anything that could come in your mind, everything you want and need, with thanksgiving, through prayer, present your requests to God. Come to Him. Pray, ask Him, look to Him, lean on Him, give them to Him. I promise you, He can handle them. And then it goes on to say, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I can't tell you how many people that I have talked to that have used that exact phrasing when they're talking about peace. They're in a situation that seems terrible. For example, you may remember my conversation with Jonathan Pitts. He lost his wife, Winter. And he said, I had such a peace that did not make any sense at the time, a peace that truly transcended all understanding. Or when I had a conversation with Bethany Hamilton, who lost her arm in a shark attack. And she said, I had a peace. There was a peace that I couldn't explain. That's exactly the type of peace this is talking about. His peace will take care of us. His peace that transcends all understanding, all logic, all practical nature of what might be going on in your world. God says, I will give you peace. My peace will guard your heart and your mind, will guard your feelings and your thoughts. That's the kind of peace I want. I'm sure it's the kind of peace that you want. And then I love how it goes on to give us more instruction of what we can do. And I was just talking about this recently. It says, finally, brothers, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. You know when I'm feeling anxious? When I'm not thinking about those things? You know when I'm feeling stressed or frustrated or overwhelmed? When I'm not thinking about those things. When I think about those things, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, when I'm thinking about those things that are going on in my life, and there are those things just like they are for you, when I think about those things, my stress decreases, my peace increases. And you really do have a peace that transcends all understanding. I want to give you some journal questions to think about, to pray about, and to journal about as you process this and put it into practice and apply it in your own life. The first question is this: what's stressing you out? I know you got it. What's on your mind? What's keeping you up at night? What makes you anxious? What are those triggers or stressors that you are dealing with right now where you are? I want you to write them down. All right, your second question is more of a challenge. I want you to present those requests to God. I want you to give those things to Him. I want you to hand them over. I want you to give them to Him, lay them at the feet of the cross. I want you to take those things that are overwhelming you, giving you anxiety, stressing you out. I want you to take them to your loving Father that I promise you can handle them. So take a minute to write down a prayer. Take a minute to present those requests to Him. All right, your third question is this: what is true in your life? What is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is excellent or praiseworthy, if anything is admirable, write down those things. I want you to set your mind on those things. I want you to think about those things. I want you to focus on those things. So for your third journal question, I want you to write down those things. What is going on in your life that falls into that category of things that are true and right and pure and lovely and excellent and praiseworthy and admirable? Write down those things. All right, I would love to pray for us as we wrap up. God, thank you that you remind us again and again in your word that stress is not from you. Anxiety, not from you. Fear, worry, not from you. But you knew that we would struggle with these things. You knew that we would struggle with overwhelm and fear and anxiety and worry. And you tell us in command form again and again, do not fear, do not worry, do not be anxious. You tell us in command form as a reminder that we don't have to live like that, that we can take control, that we can set our mind on things that are from you. And when we do that, God, that your peace will guard our hearts and our minds. God, thank you for that reminder. Thank you for that truth. I pray right now for every single person that is listening, every single person that is watching, every single person that in faith thought about or wrote down things that are stressing them out and they gave them to you. God, I pray that they would feel a tangible weight off their shoulder, that their shoulders would drop, their breathing would become deeper and more effortless, that they would truly feel that peace that you talk about, the peace that transcends all understanding. And I pray for every single person that that peace would guard their heart and their mind as they go about their day. Thank you that you love us. Thank you that you give us the gift of that peace. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all so much for watching, and you can join me next week for another episode of The Christy Wright Show. And as always, for more encouragement on finding confidence in yourself and the God that created you, visit ChristyWright.com.
Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Rip, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Rip live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.